Cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. They came in a blizzard, we offered them heat, a roof for their heads, dry shoes for their feet. We wined them and dined them, they ate our meat, and they slept in the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. They came from Fort William with murder in mind. The Campbell had orders, King William had signed. They taught to the sword these words underlined, and leave none alive called MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. They came in the night when the men were asleep, this band o' Argyles, through snow soft and deep, like murdering foxes among helpless sheep. They slaughtered the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. Some died in their beds at the hand of the foe, some fled in the night, were lost in the snow, some lived to accuse him, was struck the first blow, but gone was the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald.
All right, that was The Massacre of Glencoe by the Coreys. And as I said earlier, yesterday was the anniversary of the Massacre of Glencoe back on February 13th, 1692. Now today in Celtic history, we're going to be talking about Colonel John Hill and his relationship with Glencoe. Now it's an odd fact that out of all the civil and military figures involved in the Massacre of Glencoe, the one man who tried to prevent it from happening was an Englishman, Colonel John Hill, commander of Fort William. Hill was born in Kent and served in Cromwell's armies when they occupied Scotland in the early 1650s. In May 1657, he was appointed governor of the fort at Inverloch, the present Fort William, where he managed to establish good relations with the Lochaber chiefs. At the restoration of Charles II in 1660, his superior general, Monk, decided that the Inverloch fort should be evacuated and dismantled, and Hill left Lochaber and settled in Ireland, where he stayed until 1690. In July of 1690, Major General Hugh Mackay, Commander-in-Chief of the Army in Scotland for King William II and III, built Fort William on the Cromwellian foundations at Inverloch and appointed Hill as commander of the new fort. On the basis of his previous acquaintance with the area, at Hill's request, King William granted the adjoining settlement of Maryborough, today the town of Fort William, a charter on 13th November 1690 as part of renewed plans to promote a civilian settlement in Lochaber. Hill again managed to establish peaceful relations within the Lochaber chiefs, who had all been Jacobite supporters in the First Rising, 1689-90, and was able to prevent the West Highland clans from reassembling as a Jacobite army. A general cessation of arms was agreed, and King William proclaimed that all the chiefs must take the oath of allegiance to him by 31st of December, 1691, or face reprisals. Late in December 1691, many major chiefs hurried to submit, fearing a full-scale military attack by the government. However, Alistair MacLean MacDonald of Glencoe, chief of the Glencoe MacDonalds, was unable to make up his mind about taking the oath, and when he finally decided to do so, he left a little late. He arrived at Fort William on the 31st of December and asked Hill to administer the oath. However, Hill had no power to do this. The oath had to be sworn to a civilian authority, the sheriff in Inverary, and not to the military commander in Fort William. Trying to help MacLean, Hill gave him a letter explaining the confusion and sent him to Inverary. As it was the middle of winter, it took the chief 6 days to make the journey, but the sheriff there, Campbell of Ardkinglas, allowed him to take the oath and also wrote a letter to Edinburgh explaining why MacLean had been late in swearing. Hill had in the meantime made a formal preliminary agreement with MacDonald of Glengarry for that chief's surrender, which placed both Glengarry and Glencoe under his protection, and he ignored an order from Sir Thomas Livingston, commander-in-chief of the military in Scotland, to attack them if they held out. Now it seems, however, that the authorities in Edinburgh, and particularly John Dalrymple, Master of Stair, ignored Ardkinglas's explanatory letter and advised the king accordingly. On the 16th of January, 1692, Hill unexpectedly received King William's instructions, including a conditional order to extirpate the Glencoe men as a warning, with a violent covering letter from Dalrymple. Sir Thomas Livingston then wrote to Hill's deputy commander, who was hostile to Hill and wanted to replace him, emphasizing that destroying Glencoe was the way to win the favor of Dalrymple and the government. As Hill later testified, he considered these orders a nasty, dirty thing and was resolved rather to lay down his commission than to have put them into execution. And he delayed action, hoping for a countermand. Unfortunately, no such counter-order arrived, and by the 12th of February he had no pretext left for delay, and needing to reassert his authority over his officers, and especially over Hamilton, who was plotting against him with politicians in Edinburgh, he issued a brief authorization to Hamilton to march to Glencoe and execute Livingston's orders. The massacre ensued the next morning, the 13th of February, 1692. Hill then recovered his courage, ignored all orders to hunt down survivors, and asked permission to resettle them in their homes in Glencoe. His regiment kept order in the Highlands despite being undermanned, and he again worked to moderate Edinburgh's more disruptive orders. He attended the official inquiries held into the massacre of Glencoe of 1693 and 1694, and in the latter he was exonerated, but had to agree to the suppression of evidence incriminating Livingston. He was knighted about 1696, retired in 1698, and died in April 1701 in Edinburgh. So, I guess there was some good people there that was trying to stop this from happening, but if the king wants it, the king gets it.
Allavak hollo, allavak horoi, allavak hollo, smjarach le kwando elmi, smjarach meshedur lat feppel, gruppe ganan dusel katel, jarach gehitch na satje Trumut ma vran harle maikne Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi Smjarach me shid moach benje Gauar geri spelen sölje Ik mi stolt och hot na kölje Vi mi bever träd de sille Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi Ma vala skachie na hit fin Kemarish nak mollug mishe Chidnan kuri, chidnan krier An chid viagad iali visal Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi Chid nach gul I koshna mara An chid gul och gevachana An chid lug och guanach bianach Chid an narang vanyach bialach Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi An clochoin me sjörugur An arsterunet huad mit hogan Bröka huan over I huslich Den stua guanach kluanach gluchgach Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi Mesklando en huad mi maldram Bujen an sjås an stråldachtje Den långlua I huanda farsing Achtem nach kjunje ruske glaslan Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi Alle vak holjo Alle vak horoi Alle vak holjo Smjarach le kwando el mi
The Celtic world has more than its share of the supernatural, legends, and myth, which sometimes cross the line into reality. I tell those tales here on Dark Celtic History. The Ghost of Glencoe. Murder, massacre, betrayal, and treason. Glencoe is one of the most spectacular areas of unspoiled wilderness in Scotland. There's a haunting quality about the moor-clad mountains that stand as sentinels over the 8-mile-long glen which runs from east to west along the northern border of Argyll. And there are those who say that the glen is haunted, for this is the Glen of Weeping, the site of one of the greatest atrocities in Scottish history. Even at the best of times, Scotland has a grim and dark history. Murder has always been considered the foulest of crimes in Scots law. But in the Highlands, with its strict code of hospitality, there is a more heinous crime. It is called murder under trust. That is why the massacre of Glencoe has reverberated so strong throughout the ages. Those MacDonalds had taken in the regiment of British soldiers, mostly Clan Campbell, and given them shelter, food, and friendship. And this is why the spirits of the slain MacDonald clansmen are said to return to the Glen of Weeping from time to time, but especially every year on the anniversary of that fateful day, the 13th of February, 1692. Now winter is the time to visit Glencoe in its ghostly grandeur. The low-lying sun makes the mountains appear in their starkest and most forbidding. Shifting mists create an eerie, otherworldly quality to the landscape. However, early in the morning of that 13th of February, the anniversary of the massacre, the melancholy presence of the murdered MacDonalds is felt most keenly. On this day, people have claimed to have glimpsed ghostly shadows of the fugitive clansmen crouching among the crags. Some have even claimed to see the massacre reenacted or to have heard the plaintive cries of those who perished. One unlucky distant relative of John Dalrymple, who had taken shelter in a carriage that had broken a wheel in the middle of the glen on its way to Fort William, is said that in the darkest of the night he could hear wails in the distance, and he was tormented by the ghosts of those slain, killed because of the order sent by his distant relative all those years ago. That frightful night haunted the man, eventually driving him insane before taking his own life by hanging. The wailing is eerily reminiscent, and it is said that the atrocity could have been even more extensive were it not that the Koenig of the MacDonalds was heard wailing on the eve of the Glencoe massacre. Hearing her cries, some of the clan members took warning and fled into the mountains. In Celtic mythology, the Koenig is invisible to the human eye. Her presence is revealed by her heart-stopping wails. She will be heard crying at a waterfall on the night before calamity overtakes her clan. Now, for 300 years, the Nine of Diamonds, which is kind of an odd thing to talk about, but the Nine of Diamonds is in a deck of playing cards, has been known as the Curse of Scotland. A number of stories had been proposed to account for this, but perhaps the most persuasive is that the family crest of the Dalrymples of Stair contains 9 diamonds. The Englishman responsible for the orders to massacre the MacDonalds was named John Dalrymple, Master of Stair. Stair's last political action, though, was in the debate over Article 22 of the Act of Union concerning Scottish representation in the unified Parliament. Article 22 provided for Scotland to be represented in the new Parliament of Great Britain by 16 of its peers and 45 members of the House of Commons. It provided for Scotland's peers to have the same rights as English peers in any trial of peers. Many believe that this is a half-hearted effort on his behalf to make some sort of amends for what he knew he'd done. The guilt was just too much for him. And since he never really received any punishment for his atrocities, it is also said that by numerous servants of his that a mysterious wailing could be heard for 2 nights after the 7th of January 1707, when the approval of the Act of Union was made, and he was found dead just 2 days later in his lodgings, allegedly of apoplexy.
by the sword, from hill to loch and dark fjord, battling till his life he shed, leaving the throne to the sons of Summerland.
(1692). Whispers from heaven flow through the storied valley of Glencoe, surrounded by the hills, the heather, and the snow. Infamous for its death it holds within, nature rushes trying to wash away Campbell's sin. A cowardly, hateful hand issued the fateful order, to soldiers invited in from the cruel winter weather. Word came, the attack to be carried out as they slept that morn. The king ordered Captain Robert Campbell to attack his gracious hosts at dawn. The order said, put all to the sword under 70, by the king's special command for the good and safety of the country. How could these people be miscreants to be cut off root and branch? What sin did they commit so egregious to the king's stance? Sword and daggers slash and take life after life, and drive others into the cold and desolate wild to die. One clan will carry the stain of this day for centuries to come. The other's blood will stain the hills, valleys, and souls of Glencoe's daughters and sons. You have seen content from Olde Scot before, but this is special. This new book of mine is a work from my heart. So please watch the video. It is my hope that you'll buy the book and love it as much as I do. And thank you for watching Olde Scot. The West Highland Way in Scotland is a hiking dream for Jamie MacDonald and his daughter Neve. His upcoming divorce has made it impossible for him to make ends meet on his inadequate pay as an armored truck driver. When his daughter dies in a car accident, his whole world is torn apart. What would you do to fulfill your dead daughter's dream when you have nothing left to live for? The West Highland Way by Jeffrey MacDonald.